Hey, everybody. Awesome start. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Outhouse Thoughts. I think this is four. I don't remember anymore. Um, so last week I did the fun episode about me being sick and all of that stuff. So I know I referenced the article I wrote and I put a link in it, but I think I'm gonna read it this time. And again, I know I did this like last year, and I probably wrote this, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Can't really remember anymore. But I, yeah. So I'm going to read through this. I haven't read through it in a year. So we'll see how it goes. And I know doing this the way I've been doing this show, there's definitely going to be stuff for me to add and stuff that I'll either re-remember or think differently as, I did 3 or whatever years ago. So I just want to get this because, I mean, a lot of this, that's worded poorly. This, I think, article frames maybe why I am who I am on the internet. Maybe I'm not really sure, but I think that this is, I don't know, I guess something important to go along. And then after this, the reason I did the last episode, the reason I'm doing this episode is just because a lot of it ties into what I was going to talk about anyway. Like, I can't talk about, man, I don't know, so many things that go back to either when I was sick, going back to, you know, me being overly nice to a lot of people. And this sort of framed a lot of that. I used the word frame twice already, but I mean, not to say like I was a bad person before any of it, all of this, I should say. But yeah, I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and I already hit record, and I've been going for 2 minutes, so I'm just going to read the article. So the title of this article is "Fantasy Football is My Religion." The league. It's okay. Like at this point, I feel like the new people in the fantasy Twitter realm are like too young for it, and probably would hate it nowadays because it's one of those things where like how the hell did that get made when it did, and now it's just gross. I mean, it always was. It was back then, and we all knew that, but we were just so excited that it was a show about fantasy football that I think we overlooked a lot of the grossness of it. Social grossness, not like physical grossness, though there was plenty of that as well, but that's not really the point. It's worth watching, I guess, if you're bored. But yeah, so fantasy football is my religion. That's the name of the article. So I guess I'm just going to read along and then, pop over the other window every once in a while. It seems that when people go through a trauma, they try to find a greater meaning or purpose in life. After brushes with near-death experiences, you hear a lot of people finding religion or dedicating their lives to charity. Whether it's conscious or not, people believe things happen for a reason, and there is a greater cause as to why you went through what you did. Personally, I don't believe in that. It's good to know that I stick with that because I think that, I don't remember if that was episode 1 or 2, but I definitely talked about not believing in that. So yay, Russ, for being consistent. I believe in coincidences. I don't think everything happens for a reason. And I don't necessarily think I believe in a quote unquote higher purpose. As I start to write this, it is 5 years to the day that I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I am now completely cancer-free and technically can use the phrase cured. Technically, after 5 years, you can use the phrase cured. I will never in my life use that because I know I'm the asshole that the second they start using that, it's just going to come back, even though there's no reason for it to believe it will ever come back. But it is, I stopped in the middle of a sentence. But it was a wild and terrifying ride to get here. To make a long story short, over a year and a half, there were 8 surgeries, 2 colostomy bags at separate times, not at the same time, and a 3-week medically induced coma. To make a shorter story even shorter, it sucked real bad. But the actual health issues isn't really the point of me writing this. I was out of work for about 2 years. This means I spent a lot of time laying around, either in the hospital or on the couch at home. As you can guess, that gets boring and lonely and depressing. Rewatching Archer, Doctor Who, and Scrubs helps pass the time, but not in any way fulfilling. Like I said above, this is usually when people find their higher purpose. While sitting and reflecting on everything my life had become, I didn't find Jesus, which would be super strange since I was raised Jewish. I didn't find my life's new meaning in helping the less fortunate with no care for the consequences to my own life. I was married and my wife just had our first kid 6 weeks before I was diagnosed, so it's not like I could run off and join the Peace Corps. But what I did find was Twitter. Here's a little backstory. Growing up, I was a huge hockey fan. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, the NHL went on strike like 6 times, and I kind of got fed up with it. My friend handed me a copy of ESPN NFL 2K5 and told me everything will be okay. Clearly, he was right, because here we are. But man, that game was so damn good. You know, T.O. on the cover doing what looked like a finger roll or a one-handed catch or something. Like, seriously, like the perfect game to hand me, and because it completely just stole me with football. I was hooked into football and very quickly was drawn to fantasy instantly. That's a very poor sentence. I had tried fantasy hockey, but it was too messy to keep track of, and I didn't have enough friends dedicated to it. Leagues weren't as easy to find back then as they are now. So by the math of this story, I've been playing fantasy football for around 8 years, leading up to where our story here started. I turned into king of fantasy football knowledge among my friends, but I was about to find out that just like Jon Snow, I know nothing. Man, even while writing like a super personal something, still get that awesome pop culture reference. Booyah. I was never very good with social media. My self-esteem was a little too low to think that people would actually care about what I had to say, so I never thought anything I had to say was worth actually posting. I think this as I read about my sister-in-law posting on Facebook about being in line at Dunkin' Donuts for her 3rd time today. I mainly use social media to read and waste time. I joined Twitter mostly to follow a few of my friends who were artists so I could see the work they would post. I definitely never used it to tweet and never even really ventured to find people outside of friends and celebrities to follow. Well, I wrote here assuming you can call Matthew Berry a celebrity. Well, I mean, now he was in an Avengers movie, so he's totally a celebrity, right? So that's very warranted. So now we are back to me being stuck at home and on the couch. I'm switching off between watching SportsCenter for the 4th time that day and checking Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. As I am scrolling my Twitter timeline, I come across a tweet from @NFLosophy. I didn't know this account, I didn't know who this guy was, and I don't know how it got into my timeline, but this guy would literally change my life. The person who wasn't on television, wasn't on radio, or wasn't some household name could talk on what can talk on the internet and people would care. This guy sparked several very interesting conversations about players, teams, and sometimes fantasy. I was actually worried about following him. He would get a notification that this random person was following him. Who is this weirdo? What does he think he's doing following me? Of course, looking back now, that is ridiculously dumb line of thinking because that is literally the goal of Twitter, is to gain followers. But like I said, I was never very good with social media. Shortly after learning about football analysis on Twitter, my eyes were opened. NFLosophy retweeted Evan Silva, and life has never been the same ever since. Not only can you talk about football on Twitter, but you could talk about fantasy football on Twitter. Before this moment, the only place I knew to get fantasy advice was Yahoo, CBS, or ESPN. Not to disparage those major sites in any way, but some things these new guys were tweeting about seemed brilliant compared to quote unquote prepped for the masses stuff on the major sites. At the time, I probably followed about 50 people on Twitter, and within the next few days, that number went to about 150. Man, now it's closer to like 3,500 people following, but that's not the point. I ended up following just about every person Evan would talk about. My Twitter feed was buzzing, comparatively at least, seeing as now I follow about 1,000 people now. Even back then, 1,000, nothing. I learned about sites like RotoWorld, DLF, and RotoViz, theories like late round QB and zero RB, thanks to late round QB and FF_contrarian respectively. The amazing thing was I found myself not just laying on the couch, but actually sitting up and reading. I was interested in something for the first time in what felt like forever. Then I learned a word that would swallow my whole life, much to my wife's dismay: dynasty. Needless to say, I took the red pill, stayed in Wonderland, and I'm still seeing just how far down the rabbit hole goes. Booyah. I know I said that last word wrong, but I don't care. That's 2 awesome pop culture references. I subscribed to RotoViz and was reading every article that came out. I was following every analyst I could find on Twitter. I wanted to get into Dynasty Fantasy Football, and I wanted to be ready when I did. First, I started out asking questions on message boards. It was amazing the way people were so willing to talk to me, answer every question I had, no matter how simple or league specific it was. Next step was talking to people on Twitter. Whether it was questions about a player, rule, or format, I was finally feeling ready to ask. And it was crazy that these people who seemed like professionals and big time analysts took the time to answer my silly questions. I remember the first time someone over 1,000 followers actually answered one of my questions. I legitimately felt special. I showed the phone to my wife like I accomplished something. She stared at me like I was crazy. She still just stares at me like I'm crazy. And finally, I started posting on my own and answering other people's questions. I realized you don't need to be a professional or an expert to get into the conversation. It was just people talking to people about a game they loved. And I always felt like a bit of an outsider with my friends when it came to fantasy football, because it seemed like a whole lot more than it seemed like I liked it a lot more than they did. And I always just was looking to talk about fantasy football. But I seemed to have stumbled into a huge community of people just like me. And it was a place where people with tens of thousands of followers take the time to talk to people with 10. I felt like I found a place where I was among people who were as crazy about this game as I was, a place where I was welcome to throw out my opinion on a topic, even if nobody asked for it. As more time passed and I was looking more and more, I switched from personal account to this silly fantasy football account and have somehow amassed a giant following. I kind of wish I wrote down what that following was because, man, again, 3 years later. I lost my spot. Every time I open Twitter and I see the follower count notification counter and DM notifications, I legitimately smile. Still to this day. I was sitting and thinking one day about how it felt a little strange to come out of my huge ordeal relatively unchanged. It was then I realized that when people find religion after all these terrible experiences, it really has nothing to do with religion itself. It's about finding acceptance and community, a place where you feel among your kind, and not just something to help you get past what you've been through, but something that brings you joy to be part of. And I think that's exactly what I found in Dynasty Fantasy Football Twitter. So when I say I care about your fantasy team, I mean it. When I tell the people in my leagues I'm so happy they care enough to join, I mean it. And when I say that I appreciate Dynasty Twitter, I mean it more than I can really say. If I hadn't found this community, would I have shriveled up and died? Obviously not. But finding something to make you happy and to feel a part of at a time when you feel singled out in such a terrible way has an immeasurable effect on your life. So thank you. Even if we just started tweeting at each other yesterday, thank you. This community is filled with amazing people who don't need to be as nice as they are. And I hope that all of you realize that even though it seems like nothing to you, just interacting with people can have an amazing effect. So don't be afraid to jump into a conversation if you are new. Don't overlook someone because the amount of followers they have if you have thousands. I promise I will always do my best to give all of your tweets, polls, and questions the attention they deserve. I have never met anybody I talk to on Twitter in real life. Now I have. And part of the reason I am doing this is because the expo is coming up and I legitimately am giddy on the inside about the ability to A, hug all the people that I haven't seen in 2 years, and B, hug all the people that I haven't met yet, and gonna put it out there. I am a hugger, so just get ready for it. But still, we are a community. Now I would put we are family as opposed to community. The way I have seen us rally to help each other with donations or even just kind words is inspiring. If you ever need to talk about anything, whether it is fantasy football related or not, please just send me a message because, to quote Rodney Ruxin, fantasy football is my religion. Okay, yeah, so that was my article. My pinned tweet for like 3 or 4 years now has been, I care about your fantasy football team. And I mean, now you see why. Yeah, the community at large, and even like to break it down smaller, I literally have found family in this community. You know, people I talk to every day, a million times more than I talk to people that live near me. It means a lot. again, like I was about to say, it keeps me going. But like I said before, would I shrivel up and die? No. Would I be as happy? No, I wouldn't. This community has absolutely had positively affected me, no matter how much I get in trouble with my wife for the amount of stuff I do with fantasy football, which she's probably upstairs wondering where the hell I am right now, but that's not really the point. So, like I said, I wanted to bring this up because the expo is coming. Scott Fishbowl is happening right now, and that is literally about community. That is about meeting people you've never met before. I am in a freaking league with Tom Everett Scott from That Thing You Do, which is the coolest freaking thing in the world to me. Like it's just people that you would never in your life be able to be confronted is absolutely the wrong word, put in front of, I guess. And you're just people. That's all you are. And it's just a way to meet people. It's a way to, man, if you want this to be a thing for you, it's a way to network. It's a way to get people on your show, a way for you to get on people's shows. Like, take advantage of all of these people that you wouldn't normally talk to. And I hope other people get out of this what I do. And that's really, I think, the moral to the story of my letter at the end is this community. I like to use hyperbole, let's face it. This community saved me. Would have lived, I know. But it's not enough that it did if I don't pay that forward, I guess, is really what it is. Like, that is why I answer every single if I ever missed your DM, it was an accident. I'm sorry. If you asked me to be on your show and I said, let me get back to you, and I didn't, I have a terrible memory. Please just bug me. It is absolutely fine. I have literally never said no to going on someone's show. I have literally never said no when someone asked to come on mine. So seriously, if it's about fantasy football, just say hi. Absolutely. I will never forget, like, someone answering me and thinking it was the greatest freaking thing in the world. I mean, I have God knows how many followers because I don't look anymore. I have a podcast that has God knows how many listeners because I don't look. But to this day, like yesterday, I was listening to a podcast and they said my name and I still got giddy about it. It still has that effect on me. And I mean, I think that's awesome. And I want other people to be able to feel that because, I mean, I think I said it last show. What's the point of going through something shitty if you're not going to make things better for other people? Make it easier for someone else to go through. And along the other side of that is if you found a way to make you feel better, why not try and see if it works on other people? Because you never know what someone else is going through. I will literally never tell people that something's wrong with me. It's not that I was raised to think that way. Like, I had a very caring mother and I talked about my feelings and stuff like that, but I literally feel like a burden to everyone in my life. So I will never go out of my way to tell someone I'm having a bad day or anything, like, or if I'm in pain. I probably should have gone to the doctor months before I did. Maybe that would have saved me from the whole cancer thing. But again, it's just pain. I can live with that. It's just depression. I can live with that. The amount of years it took me to get on medication, which I just upped mine, and it's starting to work, and that's fantastic. So yeah, if you need to talk, I'm here. If you need medication, I can't help you with that, but at least I can tell you what I've been on, and maybe that'll help you. I seriously, I want to help anyone be happy in any way, shape, or form because I like when it feels to be happy. And if you have a tough time getting there, or even if you don't, whatever, like, you should be happy, right? Feels weird talking about happiness so much at this point because it's not usually such a large mainstay in my life, but it's like I said before, it's never been hard for me to really talk about how I'm feeling if I wanted to, or if I felt okay to do it. Like, if I'm in a conversation with a friend, I could easily say how I'm feeling and all of that stuff, but I'm never just going to go out and say it. But I want other people to be able to, like, I'm absolutely fine being the miserable one if it means other people get to be happy. I'm used to it already at this point. So what's really the difference? And I'm kind of whispering for some reason. I don't know why. But at that point, I think I'm going to end this. We're hitting at 20 minutes, and I don't really know what direction I'm going in anymore. Um, as always, I hope someone got something out of all that crap I just said. I hope that things get this show gets a little less depressing going forward, and that I can at least bring some levity to my insanity. But I guess we'll find out next time.